I've been wanting to make a video this week. It's been so hot, and today's kind of the first morning where it didn't feel too stifling, so I went to a yoga class, and the early morning yoga class on Friday was a gentle flow class. I thought, oh, that's perfect. So I went, and it was lovely. It was really nice. But I started about maybe 10 minutes into it. I started just weeping, bawling, and I was crying throughout the entire yoga class. And that had never happened to me before. And it was amazing. It was just this deep physical reaction to something, letting my emotions out in that yoga class felt really, really great. But I wanted to talk about yoga. In my book, I talk a lot about yoga as a very important, I don't know, just not important, just I talk about yoga as a great way to get back into your body when it comes to movement. If you, like me, have a history of really pushing yourself and over-exercising and associating exercise with weight loss, and if you want to get into a relationship with exercise that is more about self-care and appreciating your body as opposed to really sort of pushing it to look or be or perform a certain way, yoga is really, I think, the absolute best way to go. Unfortunately, many of us, or at least myself, have approach yoga like any other exercise. I used to push myself really hard. I used to compare myself to the yoga instructor, who was usually in some beautiful, thin, hot little body, and I would look at my yoga instructor and think, oh great, like if I do enough yoga, I'll look like her someday. So I just gotta really up my game. And really kind of looking at yoga as something that I could do to my body, as opposed to allowing my body to experience yoga. And it's kind of a subtle difference, but when I for years I looked at yoga as a way to kind of push my body through poses and really work it hard, and I would feel great afterwards. I don't think that was. I'm sure my body appreciated it, but mentally I was just in a really bad place with it, and I would get really wrapped up in whether I needed props or not. I felt like if I needed props, that I was somehow not good enough, or my goal was to do any pose as deep as possible without props, and if somebody else in the room was able to do it deeper than I was, I would get really competitive and feel bad about myself. And I was just in my head all the time with yoga. And I ended up, when I stopped dieting, and 2 years ago I left this particular yoga studio I was at, and it has taken me 2 years to go back there. It's taken me 2 years to go back. I think at first I had to deal with my own relationship with yoga, and I had to heal, what I expected of myself and why I was there, and really kind of redefine or reestablish a yoga practice that was kind and allowed my body to lead and to get my head out of the way. And it's taken me 2 years to get there, but then I found that I didn't want to go back because I was really embarrassed about my larger body, and I was angry because there were things I can't do anymore, and I felt ashamed. I didn't want my old teacher to have, I was ashamed to go to her classes because I felt like, deep down, no matter how much recovery I've experienced, there's still, I'm still living in a fatphobic society. I've grown up in a fatphobic society, and so I am still fatphobic toward myself. It's just an aside. I was watching God, I wish I could remember what her name is. Hannah something. She has this very moving stand-up comedy special on Netflix right now called Nanette. She's Australian, and really highly recommend it. It's amazing. But she's a lesbian comedian, and she talks about how, that the shame of coming, of not, being too ashamed to come out to people was very much the fact that she grew up in a homophobic society, and so she had to deal with the fact that she was homophobic, and that's where that shame comes from. And I think a lot of that, when we are, when we're trying to get out of that fatphobic paradigm, it's so difficult because you really have to face the fact that, I'm facing the fact that I am deeply fatphobic, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not judging that. It's just how it is. It's the society I've lived in. It's society I continue to exist in, and so, I've really having to deal with the pressure that I put on myself, and it's like a new kind of, I don't want to say self-loathing. I think that's too harsh, but it's like I've replaced dieting and this need to compete and exist within this fatphobic society, and to constantly try to lose weight, and if I can't do that, then hating myself for it. I've replaced that with living as a self-accepting person in a larger body, but with that comes so many other ways to feel ashamed, because weight stigma is real, and being treated different is real, and you are spoken to differently. I had a phone call the other day. I had all of these blood tests taken recently because I am having some joint issues, and in my shoulder and in my hip, and I thought maybe it was Lyme. So I had, a whole battery of tests taken, and I got the call from the nurse to tell me that no, it wasn't Lyme, and that my blood pressure was fine, and my triglycerides were great, and my cholesterol was fine, and my thyroid was fine, everything was great. And then she proceeded to tell me that, if I wanted to lose weight, that I needed to, really concentrate on lean proteins and not having starches and sugars. And I was like there in the phone conversation that I've talked about hypothetically so many times with Katie, and there I was getting that phone conversation and getting that doctor telling me, everything's great, you're perfectly healthy. However, you should still lose some weight. Anyway, I think all of this has been mounting, and I've been kind of holding on to it in my body. And so back to yoga. I recently returned to the yoga studio because I made the decision that staying away and hiding in my room and not going out and facing life is not doing me any, it's not doing anything for me. This this is who I am now. This is the path I've chosen, and it's very important to own it, you know, and you know, to be proud of it. Even though, you know, there's days like today where I don't feel very proud of it at all. And, you know, to remind myself every day that I have a choice. I have a choice to love and accept my body and what it can do for me and what it can't do for me and what I'm willing to do for it, which is to just let it do its thing and to leave it alone and to stop heaping hatred and criticism on it, and instead to just feed it and take it out for walks and be kind and gentle. That is the path I've chosen. And even though it's going to be difficult, it's difficult to live in this society, and it's difficult to actually exist this way when I know that part of, you know, that my entire history is one of being in a fatphobic society. I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Anyway, the point is, I've chosen to show up because the alternative is to simply live and in the society and go along with it and accept the body shame and the body hatred and feel like there's something wrong with me if I'm not always actively trying to lose weight. And, you know, I feel like I'm lucky because I have I was able to exist in a thin body, and so I can know for certain that when I was in that body, I was constantly critical of it. I was never good enough. I always wanted more. I always felt like I was being judged or looked at because I was doing it to myself, so I would externalize it to everyone else. I was incredibly, incredibly wound up and unhappy. And so I have that privilege of knowing that I don't want to ever go back to that. And I know a lot of people in larger bodies don't have that privilege of knowing. And so it must, you know, it's even more difficult to accept who you are right now in the moment without constantly feeling like your life would be better if you lost weight. But I don't want to exist in that mindset anymore. So I'm showing up and I'm feeling all the feels, and I'm sharing them with you as I go along on this journey, because I think it's important to see, I think it's important to document how difficult this is for someone like me who you know, has done a lot of research, and I've written a book about it. I mean, you know, I'm really open about it. I'm the expert, and it is incredibly difficult for me. What I do want to say is I'm so glad I've gone back to yoga, and I feel like I should do an entirely different video when I'm not this emotional on how yoga is different for me. So yeah, let me mull that over as I take some deep breaths and get on with my day. All right, well, take care, and I will see you soon.